Dr. Brenda Curtwright from USF. I currently work there. I've been working in the Silver Child Development Center for approximately 14 years, since 2001. I run social skills programming there. I coordinate a program that's been running since 2005 for 10 years. I also run a speech and language clinic there as well. In general, it's a part-time clinic, and my passion is working in the area of social skill development with children. Children, actually young adults. So I work with children. I run programs for children ages 8 to adults age 26 years old. And the programs are compartmentalized into children from 3rd to 5th grade. That's actually the way I break it down. 3rd to 5th grade, 6th to 8th grade, 9th to 12th grade, and young adults age 18 to 26 in that category. So today what I'm going to be talking about is how to help your child grow socially. Social skills are a very important component to a child's livelihood, general happiness, ability to succeed in life, do well in school, and to procure employment. So I'll be talking about that in general. So I'm a speech language pathologist, and I have a Ph.D. in education. And I currently work, again, in the Department of Psychiatry at USF in the Marsani Medical School. And I'm pretty much speaking today from my expertise and working as a social skill coordinator for 10 years. So a child who typically is having difficulty in socialization, which socialization, the way I'm defining it, is the ability to interact with peers, ability to make friends, hang out with others, and generally a lack of socialization in children can turn into emotional and mental difficulties later in life. Friendship helps children to learn to talk, get along with others, and work through problems. And children with friends do better in school because generally they like going to school. So there's research to support that there's a benefit to children improving their social skill development in terms of outcomes being academic betterment, improvement in school. But some of the research is really showing that one of the reasons for that is that children enjoy going to school if they're going to see their friends. So that also helps them, but also being able to work in a group or 2 or more children will also improve your ability to increase your knowledge if you're able to collaborate. So therefore, children who are able to have social interaction with others and be successful at it, they're better able to manipulate the environment, to navigate, actually, if you will, the school environment, and therefore work with others and perform better perhaps on group projects and that type of thing. So this is the main reason why social skill development is really important. It can lead to a bigger picture. Academics, happiness in a child, the ability to have confidence in getting along with others and making friends, and that leads to higher self-esteem in general. Okay. So talking a little bit about the research on social skill development, social skill development can help children. Actually, the instruction itself can help build skills. So the big picture is that what I'll be talking about today is I will be talking about the value of a child receiving social skills development or instruction through a system, such as programming, a programmed approach, formal social skills programming, which is what the research supports as being successful in the longer run, as well as how parents can help their children. So it's a combination, you need both. But I want to start off by just talking about social skills instruction a little bit, about the research. So quality intervention has been found to be helpful that addresses these four main areas. Focus on social emotional learning, emphasizing reflection and self-awareness. So there needs to be, in a program, a child needs to be able to reflect on what they're learning. They need to be able to, you have to improve their ability to be aware of their own behavior. Also create opportunities to practice effective social skills, both individually and in groups. It is important to work at the individual level and also have a child working in groups. There's support. There is research to support the value of group interaction in social skill development. Also, to adjust instructional strategies to address social skill deficits. So really looking at the deficit area of the child and scaffolding them, building up their skills from that point upward. That would be the idea, is to try to identify that. In my social skills program, I do an intake interview. It's a formal interview to understand what is going on from the parent's perspective. I interview the child and find out what's going on from their perspective. I collect data from the school environment, and I find out what's going on from the educator's perspective. So I try to get, I feel, a full myriad of understanding as best I can of what's going on with the student. I also tailor social skills. Well, this, again, let me back up for a second. This is based on what is effective in social skills programming in general, and sometimes I'm going to go back and forth with what I'm doing as well in teaching social skills. But also tailoring social skill interventions to individual student needs. So it's trying to figure out, again, what is going on and working at that level. So, for example, I work with typically groups of 3 to 5 children. I'm going to just use myself as an example. In social skills group that run for 12 weeks. The groups are 1 hour, 60 minutes a week. And what we are doing now is we use a programmed approach where we're using a curriculum that is evidence-based, that we use to teach a skill, we practice a skill, and then we will have the child self-evaluate their skill set based on what they've learned. Well, what is very important also, so we'll give them, for them to get the basic understanding of what we're teaching, I generally teach something called perspective taking, and perspective taking is getting the child to understand how other people see them, understanding the perspective of another person, how that other person views them. So we work with perspective taking, and that will take quite a while. My program is 12 weeks long in general. That might take 4 weeks to understand that there's a behavior that the child does that evokes a feeling in others. That feeling evokes a consequence from the other individual, and that consequence evokes a feeling in that child. So that's important for that child to understand that relationship, so that we're working from a perspective of getting them to understand what they're doing, thinking through what's happening, so that they can begin to make a decision about what they're doing and deciding about how their behavior is going to be, so that they can decide how to impact another person. So tailoring the social, so we do that, but then as we go through a program about the 6-week level of I'm going to say time frame, halfway through, we then identify an individual, 1 or 2 individual behaviors in a child to help them, for us to decide to focus on that behavior, for the child to be informed that that's what we're working on, and then we are going to have them self-evaluate that behavior from there to throughout the following 6 weeks of the program. We found that to be very successful because we're able to tie that into informing the parent of what's going on. We get their understanding, their acknowledgement, and their agreement, and then it seems as if we're able to make more strides than just giving them a general, somewhat programmed approach for 12 weeks. So we do the 12 weeks of a programmed approach, but we also tailor the specific social skill. We focus on if a child is needing the ability to think about how their body is positioned in a group. Are they staying with their group? Is a child able to use eye contact? Everyone has a different area that they need to be working on, and so we will focus on those particular things in certain children. We also focus on turn taking, our focus on their ability to stay on topic maintenance. We might also focus on a child's ability to even use what we call whole body listening, which is not just listening, but it's showing someone you're listening. So there's a difference, because children, group members will always say they're listening when they're looking in another direction. Well, they're not always, but that happens. And we are basically saying that it's important to show someone you're listening. So that's where the perspective taking comes in. Again, coming from the perspective of how is someone else accepting you? How are they feeling about you? So that's why I'm just adding in that those are these quality interventions that have been found to be successful and helpful, are things that I'm using currently in a program, and I find them to be very helpful. So another series of strategies that are helpful in teaching social skills and improving social skills are encouraging children to consider how actions result in consequences, developing the child's ability to take on the perspectives of others. Actually, I've said that, but I'm just reiterating it now, and teaching the child to think through situations or rehearse possible outcomes. So developing their perspective taking is important, as I had said before, and it's really the whole foundation of the way I think social skills can really make a difference, because it's really teaching from an approach that you're trying to get the child to understand what is going on and why they need to be making the changes that they're making, versus me saying to someone, you're not doing something correctly. It's getting them to understand that in the long run, this is going to impact feelings and then ultimately impact the child's feelings in the end. So. Also, successful programs also create opportunities for practice. They model effective social skills through praise, positive reinforcement, and correction and redirection of inappropriate behaviors. So it's very important for programs to model what it is that they're expecting a child to learn. Their child has to see that. In my program, I have the benefit of, I work usually with volunteers who they're usually graduate level or above. I usually have one or two who work with me in my program, and we're able to role play and model the behaviors we're looking for that we're teaching. We teach one skill a week, and then we model that. In the beginning of our program, we review all previously learned skills. So we review those, and then we incorporate them all. It's all cumulative, and then we model those behaviors as we go. So it's also very important to use praise, positive reinforcement, and correction. So we're constantly and very positive, trying to give students specific praise, which is really key, whether you're a parent working with your child and whether you're working as a professional, to tell the child exactly what it is that you're praising them for. And so, for example, I like the way you're using eye contact today, or I like the way you're looking at me. That's making me feel very important. Okay, so I will possibly make that connection, or at least try to make the connection as often as possible. That's the way the program works. Very detailed, a lot of communication. Positive reinforcement and correction. So if something's not happening, if the group members are working together in any particular group and they're not working well together, we're constantly questioning them using the Socratic method to ask them, what is happening? What is happening? Getting them to think through. We call it expected behavior. That's curriculum social thinking. One of the curriculums that I use. It is well received more and more in research. And the question is always, are you using expected behavior? Is everyone using expected behavior? And what that means to them, it's a cue for thinking about the expected behaviors that they've learned, eye contact, staying with your group, topic maintenance, staying, problem solving, using basic problem solving skills, being able to keep your body calm in a group, how to show your group members that you are pretty much on task, and there's always the payoff for that. And the group members, they understand that as they're going, because as they're working better together, they're enjoying each other, they're enjoying the group pretty much, and they are feeling that encouragement from each other, and they enjoy it. So they are more likely to want to use their skills. At least that's what I've found over the 10 years I've been working with this. Also, discuss ways of doing another successful strategy in working with a group, or one of the practice elements would be discussing ways of doing things using steps of the current way to do it. Role-playing social situations also, and meeting someone new, asking if you can play, for example. That would be a role-play scenario. And I'll be talking later about a couple of evidence-based curriculum. I'll be talking, and what comes to mind when I look at this is the Prepare curriculum, which I'll talk a little bit about later, by Arnold Goldstein. And this is a program that I'm using this just to illustrate. It's a step-by-step detailed program that explains the social skills that you break a social skill down into components of maybe 3 or 4 steps. You practice those steps, you have a homework assignment, and then the child practices that at home. And most of the programs that I use do have that component. They have a homework assignment, and I do parent training as well. So successful programs create opportunities for practice, and that's what the bottom line is here. Successful programs also adjust instructional strategies to address social skill deficits. As I mentioned before about the deficits, we need to really focus on those key elements that the child is having challenges with for it to make a difference. If a child goes through a program for 12 weeks and they get a generic program of 12 great social skills interventions that I've had experience teaching, we still might miss the boat and being able to actually make a difference in that specific skill that child is having. So, for example, if a child's having a difficult time initiating communication with a peer, and we are focusing on eye contact, and we might be focusing on, I can rattle off probably about 12 skills that would be very good, and they would be great skills for children to learn, but they might not focus specifically on that initiating communication. And the reason why we do the 6 weeks of kind of a general approach and then we tailor it is because in that 7th week, in the example I gave in the way I do programming, is we are now going to focus on initiating for that child from here to the end of the 12th week. And so what we will do is that we'll incorporate everything from the time the child comes into the lobby to speak with his peers who are possible in the group, to specific homework assignments that are going to focus on that child initiating, that might incorporate a teacher or might incorporate a parent. We're going to focus on that for that particular child. It takes a little longer, but at the end of the program, we're going to have more success and the child feeling like they can engage with their peers. So situations need to simulate real-life challenges a student may encounter, and real life can include situations the student may have at home, school, and in the community. So when we're working on social skills or any program, really, which is I'm really presenting this from the perspective of what a good program is, how to grow social skills. We're just talking now about through a programmed approach and what's successful. Those programs should be addressing home, school, and community, and hopefully they would know that information. I'm using my illustration of the way my program runs just to give specific examples of how I've done it. So also working with children in the home, it's very important for the parent to be involved in any training that the child's receiving, and for the parent to have specific instruction in what they are supposed to do. Okay, so I've been teaching social skills for a while, And I've trained parents in various ways. I've sat down. I've had meetings after a group. I've had meetings intermittently through a 12-week program. At the 6-week mark, I've had them at the 3rd week and the 9th week. I've done it in different intervals, like every 3 weeks, every halfway through. And one thing I found from parents is that they need to have training as often as possible. That's what I've found, because parents sometimes feel like they do not have the knowledge base of sometimes how to do some basic skills, and so they benefit from constant communication from the group leader, in case that would be me. So what happens is I give parents a lesson plan in order to communicate to the parents what I'm doing in a group. How I make that work is I give them a lesson plan of what I do. I indicate on the bottom of the lesson plan how the parent can carry over the skills, how the parent can help the child at home. I also inform the parent that they can take the information to their school. I try to give them the means of which they can inform the school. And I'll talk a little bit about how schools can help, because it's not that simple, especially depending on what grade the child is in. So it's important to, I'll address that as we go, but it's important to know, though, that there can be a benefit to collaborating with your teachers, with community members, whether it's your church, whether it's a civic organization like the YMCA, or any type of community taekwondo, a community program that a child is involved in. So that would be important for a program to consider that in their instruction on how to communicate to a parent, how that could be accomplished, how all those factors can be accomplished. Another successful component of a programmed approach would be to tailor social skill interventions to the needs of the individual. I discussed that already, but just to specifically state, strategies must be used for the particular deficit, meaning if you're dealing with conversational skills, for example, if a child's having a problem, not really being able to talk to others, it's important to use an intervention that specifically focuses on conversation, rather than thinking, well, just talk, or encouraging talk. There's a lot to conversation. There are books on conversation, or how to just have a one-way conversation, a two-way conversation, how to initiate it, how to close it, how to maintain it. So there's a whole series of lessons. One program that I use currently, and actually I will just show it, is one of the research-based programs is called the Peers Treatment Program. It's out of UCLA, Social Skills for Teenagers with Developmental and Autism Spectrum Disorders. A lot of the children who take social skills program, many of the children that I work with have autistic spectrum disorder, and they also have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But then I have children who don't have a diagnosis, but who are having difficulty making friends. That's the smallest component that makes up my group. Some of these children, though, might have other characteristics of something that would hold them back, like they might be anxious, very anxious. Some parents would describe it as their child is very shy, and sometimes there are other things that are going on that the parent has not had the opportunity to explore. But when they enroll them in a social skills program, usually if I work with a child and I notice anything that I think is going on, a child who is extremely sad, a child who is very nervous, very anxious, who's not able to do some of the homework assignments, which might be to interact with another peer, we'll bring it to the parent's attention and make a referral, perhaps, for them to seek some additional feedback on how, from a professional, on get an opinion on what someone else might think, maybe in the form of a psychologist, a social worker, a psychiatrist. So in other words, social skills is something as a child can benefit from. I'm talking about a programmed approach, but sometimes additional support, additional investigation is warranted for a child to have success in addition to social skills. So sometimes I will have a child who will come to me, they'll enter my program, and they might have low self-esteem. And so we'll be working on an assignment. We get homework assignments for them maybe to go and look at someone else to see who's looking at them. Okay, so they have to use eye contact to do that. That's a little trick there. And so I will have a child come back to me week after week and tell me that they can't do it. No one likes them. It will be a continuous series of inability to complete a task. And because they just can't, they're too afraid to approach someone or something like that. At which point, if we're not able to move through the program, I might make a referral to a social worker, psychologist, another professional to have the parent investigate to just see if there's another avenue that the child can go down to be successful. And if the child goes down that avenue, there are times where the provider who is serving that child might come back to me. So the child might either continue in my program and get concomitant services from the other professional, or they might just have to take a sidestep. We might decide that they would go to receive services from the other professional and then come back to me when the professional thought that the child was ready to come back. In some cases, the child might not be able to, the parent just might request the child stay in the program. And so in which case, we would just let the parent know in those cases where that happens, that the program is mainly going to be focusing on exposure, and that we're focusing on that, but a lot of times it's very difficult for the child to realize and demonstrate skill development when we're in a series of being extremely sad, or we can't practice the skills. If you can't practice the skills, typically we're not going to see much improvement. So, in general, in summary of programmed approach, the best interventions in terms of social skills may not produce observable results. Unfortunately, the research is mixed on that. And a well-defined systematic framework or program may be required. Programs that have evidence-based interventions may contribute to success. And there are certain programs, I'm just going to be sharing a few of them today, that do have that level of evidence, but the research does pretty much state that it is mixed. The outcomes in social skills programming is mixed, and there are lots of reasons for that. Some of the studies that have been done do not control for certain things like maturation of a child. They do not, it's hard to isolate what you're looking at. If you're looking at a child, programs are, if you're looking at a child ASD, and I typically, if I'm dealing with middle school children, I don't know what interventions have already been in place. It's hard to get a child who's had no some children have had no intervention, but there's a whole myriad of mixture when you get some children. Some have had social skills, some have not, some have had some in school. It's hard, they're usually not on the same playing field. Even though children who are usually in my program are mild to moderate, at least, probably severe on the autism spectrum, speaking of children with ASD, they're all presenting with differences. Some of them are coming to me and presenting as if they have friends. Some of them have friends, but they're having difficulty with being able to work in a group. They might feel uncomfortable working in the school environment. Some come to me and they are very, very social, but they're not really listening to they're among others, but they're not really listening to others. They're just kind of very outgoing. And so it's hard you have and some children are not speaking hardly at all to others. So it's hard to get that group into a research study to be able to compare their receiving service interventions and then looking at outcomes when you're dealing with maybe 5-6 different things, and it's just 3 different things in the example I just gave you. So that's one of the challenges, but there are many more. So even though social skills I'm going to be talking today about how you can work at home or what a parent can do. The key here is saying that systematic framework may really be required. And that's what my finding has been, is that I've had parents come and say, I've bought every book that I can get my hands on, but we're not seeing results. And so what I find is by the time a child gets to about that middle school stage, 12 years old, 7th grade, they have a tendency not to pay attention to their parents as much. And I'll be talking about developmental stages a little bit. It will maybe explain a little bit more about that. But parents are not able to seemingly communicate as well in terms of what they're hoping for social skills for their children. Their children are learning more from their peers at that point. So a few systematic approaches I just want to point out that have been that are evidence-based are positive behavior support, PBS, which addresses social skill interventions within a border school district and even state context. So it's a program that is in some school systems that is focusing on how to bring about behavioral change through using heavy positive reinforcement, as well as having a team of educators set goals for behavior that includes social skills, having adults model behavior and use positive reinforcement, and students can go to social clubs, for example, or social after-school programs, if they're available, to practice skills and experience positive interaction with peers. So positive behavior support is something that is more of a program that would probably be in a school setting, or possibly a type of a structured environment that parents might not, it will either somewhat be there or not. So parents would not be able to do this program, but it's good to know that this program does exist. It's nationwide, but I have not seen it consistently from state to state. Effective program components would include modeling social skills through activities, playing games, role play, feedback to the child, and also student practice. The goal is to transfer skills to other settings, and the idea is to have the child come together and somewhat make it as real as possible, come up with role plays that are something that would be significant to a child. So a lot of the time it was recently we play a game called the friendship game, okay, in my program. When we play our game, at the end, the friendship game has 3 components, and every game you have to share positive feelings. You have to congratulate the winner and then use positive self-talk if you're losing, and you say to yourself, I'm not winning the game, I'm winning the friendship game. And the idea there is to get you to realize I might be losing, but I could be winning, okay, to keep you in it. Well, it was just interesting that the games, some of the materials that I was using, some of the materials, children are pretty much calling out for other type activities. So for example, anime, very common now. Playing with, probably anime, it's probably overtaking a little bit of Pokemon, okay? Comic-Con, common outlet for children on the spectrum and some children with ADHD. Well, that's what they want to role play about. They want to role play asking someone to play those things or interact on those things. Comic-Con a little bit older. The anime can be a myriad from child, probably 3rd grade up to high school. Comic-Con, I'm seeing more like middle school, high school, but it's the action adventure. It's the role playing involved in that, and kids love that. And so when we're talking about conversations, and I have to be aware of what it is that that teens are talking about, younger children are talking about, what matters to them, so that they're able to role play effectively. I can't just introduce my idea. They need to give me their idea. So these are just examples, just to take that a little bit further. Student practice is important. Role playing is important. Videotaping a session, a role play, playing it back, having your child evaluate it for them to see. Something called video modeling is becoming more and more popular, where you videotape a child doing a behavior, and then you show them, you look at it. We're looking at it on the screen, and then we're praising it. And it can be more involved than that, but just the general overview is it's really having the child review their videotape and giving them praise for doing pro-social skills. And it can be used in other components. It's been mostly used with children who are selective mutes. In general, just a little background on it. It's been successful in that way to help them learn how to see themselves being successful, speaking to people outside of their natural environment. And so it's something that's been used also in social skills, in the social skills arena with success. Then the goal again is, I want to reiterate, is to teach the skills, to model the skills, to practice the skills, but then the big picture is for the skills to be transferred outside of the therapy room to the community, to the school, and to home. So that is the hard part. That's usually where the research shows where the problem comes in. The child will do very well in the programmed approach in the social skills classroom, and then they will walk out and they will not use the skills. And they call that the therapy room effect. I know that's not just for social skills, but that happens in social skills as well. So the way we try to offset that is by including homework assignments, parent training to help use the same vocabulary that we are using in the groups that we're teaching, and then to get the parents to encourage the child through praise in the home environment. And perhaps if we can incorporate the schools, then that would also be helpful to have the teachers also working with us, which is not always easy, but in some scenarios it can happen, especially if a parent will ask a teacher for support. It can sometimes, especially, I'm going to say, it can be very helpful. I've seen it be very helpful in the past, but it requires a little bit of collaboration. It doesn't help if that parent is a volunteer at the school. So in some way, shape, or form, you don't have to be there all the time, but perhaps being able to just be available for an occasional field trip, an occasional something where you can incorporate yourself into the school environment. That could also help you in terms of getting a teacher to help you identify another child who might be a good peer mentor for your child. I'll talk a little bit about that later when I talk about ways parents can help their children. So skills streaming, as I mentioned before, is tailored to students it's a little bit different from the Peers program, which was a program for teenagers with developmental delays. It's also been researched and found effective for young adults. There's some research to support that. Social skills for teenagers with developmental and autism spectrum disorders by Laugesen and Frankel. The Prepare curriculum was another one. It's tailored for students with aggression, immaturity, withdrawal, or other problems. And it, as I said before, it breaks skills into steps. And it walks students through those steps to encourage reflection, discussion, understanding, and competency. So just as an example, quick little example here of a typical lesson would be introducing yourself. Great lesson for the beginning social skills child. Choose the right time and place to introduce yourself. Step 1. Step 2, greet the other person and tell your name. Step 3, ask the other person his or her name if you need to. And step 4, tell or ask the other person something to help start your conversation. Now, what I found is, in working with children on the spectrum, is that for children who are a little bit more moderately to severely impaired, they work, especially moderately impaired. I find that they do better when you do break down these steps, when you have 3 or 4 steps of what you're doing. they're able to look at that visibly, okay? So I have a large poster up, and we look at that visibly, and they're able to practice that. They see it modeled between me and another co-leader, which I'm a leader of a group. I have a co-leader of a group who works with me. We model the behavior, and then we call one of the group members up to practice with us. They practice skills. And they are able to then evaluate themselves at the end, say what they did. The group members who are present will give feedback as well about what they think happened. Did they follow those 3 or 4 steps that I just outlined? That's what they're doing. And then we do it over and over and over. The following week, we're using that skill, and then we're adding a component. So if that's introducing yourself, it might be introducing yourself to 2 people. I mean, we don't go possibly that fast. We do wait and see if we can see some proficiency and the ability of the child to use the skill. But my point is that we do add on related skill sets. And it's important for, I find children who are more mildly impaired to have that breakdown of steps. Children who are more mildly delayed, I think it's helpful for them to have the steps as well, but we can sometimes use a different approach where we go a little bit more into perspective taking and talk about really they're being driven from not necessarily the steps, but they're being driven from the thought that they're impacting people's feelings. Those are leading to consequences. The consequences are leading to behavior and the child feeling good. We do then go over steps, but they're not as driven by following 3 steps. They will think, okay, conversation, I need to go up and speak to someone. I need to say hello. I need to then trade information. Okay, that's like a different lesson, but more mildly impaired students, I will use an approach where we're trading information. The reason we trade information is for us to get to learn something about another person. So it kind of is it's a different direction of why we do something. We're not doing it because we want to follow these steps, but we're doing it because we want to learn from someone else to find out if we have a common interest. So we're going just a little bit further, even though the child who got the steps, who's a little bit moderately more impaired in the area of autism, they are also learning that the payoff is that they're going to feel good because they're going to be interacting with another person, with a peer. So to summarize on skill streaming, breaking steps, skills into steps, it's just one program that does that, and it walks students through these steps to encourage their reflection and discussion and understanding and competency. That program can be used with many students' ADHD. I didn't really talk about that, but it can be used with students with different disabilities as well. But I was just focusing on ASD, on that one. Social stories is another evidence-based practice. It's designed to help children interpret challenging or confusing social situations. Each story breaks social situations into steps, descriptions, and illustrations to help a child understand the entire situation. Teachers read the story with the student each day for a specific period of time, and stories can prompt a child or a student when he displays inappropriate behaviors. It's designed to help students learn and internalize messages and strategies found in the story and use them smoothly and automatically in his daily life. And so a child who's having problems, who doesn't want to join a group. Some students don't like to work with others. They're a little bit nervous about being in a group. And a lot of schools now, with the curriculum that we're doing now, some of you may have heard of the Common Core standards that are in the state, as well as many other states. They're focusing on higher order thinking skills for children to work through and in order to analyze information. And a lot of the time, these students are going to have to work in groups with others to get to accomplish some of the rigor of that curriculum. So social stories, they're usually used mostly for children on the spectrum, ASD, and you can literally have them written out so that a child can read the story every morning and understand what they're going to be encountering. So they're going to be working with a group of people. They're going to be working with a group of students. They're going to walk up. They're going to ask a question or state what they're going to do. They're going to, if they are just meeting a group of children for the first time, they're going to introduce themselves. They're going to, you're going to give them a way of the way it's going to look. You're going to go through the story with them, and then they're going to interact with the group. And the evidence shows that it's very helpful in working with children, especially if this is something that it has to be done on a daily basis with a child on the spectrum, maybe for a child who's a little bit more moderately impaired, but even children who I've seen who are mildly impaired benefit from being able to go. Social stories like can be 5 sentences. Review it. You just review it before the day starts, and they have to go and embrace it and then try to do it. And it makes them feel more comfortable. And in general, I've seen it have positive outcomes. Barriers to socialization. So all that is basically saying that there are some great programs out there that you can use, that can be used to help children improve social skills. So even though a child might have a deficit, the good picture is that the deficit can be worked on and improved. And there is socialization. Barriers to socialization: if a parent is detached, inconsistent, fails to surround a child with peers, or neglects a child's needs. A child might not know how to express emotions, obey social rules, or recognize social cues, or develop empathy. So I've stated that social skills is important, but there are barriers. And some barriers can be things that parent can't necessarily control. Parent might not be available. Parents work very hard. Some parents are not as present. They might be in a single parent family, and might not be able to play with their child or be present as often. And if that child, many parents come to me in social skills, for social skills, because their child doesn't have anyone to play with in the neighborhood. There's no children in the community. They will say, and if a child, for example, is not able to play with peers, it might lead to emotional distress at some point. They might not have the ability to practice social rules or engage with others and learn social rules, that there are boundaries, and recognize that social cues are something that they should be reacting to. Okay, so developing empathy is important. Some children that I see in social skills programs, they don't necessarily relate to others as well, and so if someone shares a sad story about their dog being sick or whatever that they might be experiencing that is making them sad, some children are not necessarily knowing what to say or how to respond to that. And I've seen children do the exact opposite thing that you would expect. Either change the subject, talk about something happy that they're experiencing, going to Disneyland or something, I'm just throwing that as an example, or they might just change the subject altogether and not even address it. And that's a social cue that can result in a breakdown in social communication with another child. So this barrier is the big picture, is that there are some things that a child can't control that can result in a child having a lack of social skills. Other barriers can be technology, overscheduling, or environment. Technology, at one point in 2011, the Academy of Pediatrics had said that technology was actually helpful in socialization of children because children could work on projects together, they could learn, they could meet people through technology, through being various ways of working on a computer and working with other people, meeting other children in a healthy way. In other words, in a way that, of course, would be, eliminating issues of any type of cyberbullying, predator, anything like that could be a problem using computer. But that's actually what they stated, is that technology could be helpful. But now some research is coming out recently that's showing that technology, parents are concerned about the amount of time that children are on the computer, their cell phones, and the fact that that's having a negative impact on their ability to even socialize at home with parents. Dinner time, interacting, children are not as interested in interacting with the family unit, because they would possibly be rather they'd rather be playing a video game. So that's a factor and a barrier. Overscheduling, a lot of parents put their children in a lot of activities, and those activities it's causing a child to be highly structured and not having downtime to make friends or to be able to explore other relationships, even maybe with children, maybe in a different setting, in a community or something of that nature. And so that creates a difficulty in a child developing social skills. The environment, as I said before, some parents will say that their children have no friends in the community. And so that's also a barrier. And I would just say that those are usually these are common reasons that I hear constantly from parents is why their children are having trouble making friends. So I'm just going to show a short clip on social deficit. Someone talking about, well, she's a professional provider talking about social deficits.
One of the most important skills for your child to learn is how to relate effectively to others. Success at school, with friends, with boyfriends and girlfriends, and even in their future jobs will rely heavily on their ability to accurately read and interpret social cues. When a child misinterprets someone else's behavior, they can't respond appropriately, and they'll have difficulty decoding social situations. When they reach high school, social interactions will only get more intense and complex, and your child may fall behind their peers. Many kids with social skills issues know that they struggle with peers and with maintaining friendships, and these challenges early in life can have a profound impact on how they feel about themselves. We live in a world made up of relationships, and the ability to communicate effectively with others is an essential life skill. Social skills challenges are usually different for each child. The work of Dr. Frank Grisham describes 3 distinct types of social deficits. Skills acquisition deficits. Children lack the specific steps and strategies for successful social interactions, and they often don't know what they need to change. Performance deficits. Children know how to interact successfully with friends and peers, but they fail to use the skills at appropriate times, or they may be too anxious to seize social opportunities. Fluency deficits. Children understand the strategies and timing of social interactions, but their application of skills in social situations is awkward or inappropriate. Have a question? Please send them to me over Twitter by adding hashtag Dr. Sylvia after your question. And for more information and tips, please follow me on Twitter at Dr. Gehring, and please visit my blog at GehringUp.com. I'm Dr. Sylvia Gehring.
And one of the things I want to point out there is that the performance, some children do have acquisition deficits and some do have performance deficits. With acquisition deficits, I see children who sometimes they don't really know how to interact with their peers, and I find a social skills program is really good for that. And then I see children with performance deficits who they have a lot of skills, but they just don't have sometimes confidence to try to use them. And sometimes those group members will come to my group and they might go through a program once and be fine, be better. And whereas a child who's acquiring skills might be really longer, might be in a program for a longer period of time. I'm just now talking about social skills milestones. So we've already talked about the importance of social skills. We've talked about the value of them and that there are programmed approaches to help it. I want to just talk a little bit about social developmental general milestones. These are milestones by Erik Erikson stages, who famous psychologist who focused on social development and the impact of social development on behavior. Okay, and basically the categories that I've broken this down into is 0 to 5 years. where the infant is playing alone. The child also plays with another child and learns to take turns, and a child learns to play in a group of 3 or 4 children by kindergarten. And generally, Erickson says that children are beginning to be social at about 3 years old. That's not up there, but children are pretty much beginning that phase at the age of 3. But of course, that's not a hard and fast rule. That can be a little earlier, even later for some children, but that's just on average. Also, from 6 to 12 years old, child's very social stage of development. School, neighborhood is key. Child having friends in the community would be helpful here, or at school. And if a child is experiencing unresolved feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, a problem can occur in this stage. Typically, I had talked about perspective taking earlier, how that's important for a child to know, understand how other people see them. That typically starts from my experience and from my understanding at about the age of 8 years old. I find that I've worked with children. Now, of course, that's not a hard and fast rule, but I've worked with children as young as 5 years of age, actually preschool, 3 years old, 4 years old, in the area of social skills. And I have experienced that I'm not as successful until I'm working with a child about 3rd grade and up. Not to say there is research to support efficacy in children as young as kindergarten, but I find that until a child can understand how they're socially and developmentally that other people matter, which typically doesn't happen until about 8 years old, roughly, then they're not really going to buy in as much into what I'm teaching them about why they should be doing something to impact others. They might not care as much or be as aware. And so they fall into the, usually 3rd grade is about right there where a child is beginning to become more social, from my experience, and they're beginning to notice that they haven't received the invitation to the party. Okay, if people are handing out invitations, it becomes a little bit of an issue 3rd, 4th grade. Whereas in the earlier stages, they're not as focused on that. They're more inward and focusing on themselves. So 12 to 18 years, separation from family, strong devotion or focus on friends and causes. So being maybe they might have a cause, a real strong belief of right and wrong, justice. That is possibly going to be seen more likely in those in that age range, 12 to 18 years. And significant relationships with peer groups are important. So a child is pulling away from their parents and focusing on peers at this point. Okay. Meta-analysis by Rao and Murray, 2008, showed that social skills in childhood was linked to positive outcomes. Children having deficiency in social skills was linked to deficits in academic and social development. Neurotypical preschool children can observe social challenges and peers, and children don't outgrow their challenges. They take them usually right through to adulthood. And so this was a meta-analysis that looked at a large number of studies on social skill development, and that's why I'm sharing this particular study with you. It was just very interesting that neurotypical children preschool age can observe the challenges in their peers who are having social deficit challenges. So it starts very early. Also, some of that reiterates what I've said before about the positive outcomes in academic environments. Also, Reichow and Volkmer in 2010 found that most data in social skills programming does not show strong ability for generalization, which I had said before. That's what I had called transfer, which is something that has been a problem in terms of showing positive outcomes there. ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, and Social Competency Teaching have strong evidence for school-age students, and ABA is typically something that I've seen done successfully to some extent with children on the spectrum in terms of trying to modify behavior, doing behavior modification, trying to change a child's behavior, potty training, more specific skill sets. I've seen some of it with social skills for children who are on the spectrum as well. Video modeling, as I talked about before, using visual cues, peer mentoring, and parent training have positive impacts. So working with, also something I haven't talked about is peer mentoring, is having another child the same age of the target child that we're working with, helping that child to think about what they're doing and reminding them to use certain social behaviors like eye contact, or being able to just maybe in some cases complete their work in school, sitting with another student and having that student remind the student of what they need to be doing. So those are things that have been, so there is some, we still have a ways to go in terms of research. We're seeing more a little more research to support social skill development and the generalization as time is going, but it's also good to know that these other components like parent training and visual cues, peer mentoring are having a positive impact on students or on children with social skills deficits. So I want to move into now, we talked about systems, how systems can help, but parents are also a really key component of helping their children learn socially, and want to talk about some of the recommendations on that. If your child is experiencing problems in social development, recommendations would be to look for a child, boy or girl, who your child can play with. Now this is younger children when I'm saying boy or girl, probably younger, probably early elementary age children group. Have a supervised visit. So this is setting up a play group. It would be important to try to get another child to work with a child who's not having success making friends. This would also, my recommendation here is to include a parent. For example, invite them to lunch, okay? If you can at your house or something like that, a tea party, something that you could come up with to have the parent there so they feel comfortable separating from their child. Have a snack for the children and then a short play period. And as soon as you see the child looking uninterested in the play session should be no longer than an hour recommended, maybe for this age group even shorter than that, 30 minutes. But there's no hard and fast rule. The idea though is not longer than an hour, but to end the session if you see a child losing interest. When children become at ease with each other, that can be modified, and you can arrange for the other child to play alone with your child for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes. So you're going to increase that duration over time and a little bit of the independence for the children to be alone, but you're in earshot so that you know what's going on. Eventually, you're going to allow the children to play alone, as I said, for gradual periods of time. When things go well, you can go to someone else's, the child can go to someone else's house, and you can also accompany the child when that happens and just to supervise. You also want to make arrangements for the child, your child, to be picked up on time. So there's a little detail there, but the idea is that you really want to set the time limit and you want to make it so that your child can end the session on a successful note while everyone's having fun, or it's a more positive versus letting the play session go too long and breaking down, and then it's a negative experience that maybe the other child or the parent does not want to repeat. So you also want to arrange to be informed if the visit needs to be terminated if your child is at someone else's house. So you want to make those arrangements so that you're not surprised. Everyone is aware of what can happen, of how you can be reached. And also group play is next. And if trouble ensues, offer to have groups help to do something. So what I mean by that is, all right, so I gave an example of one-on-one play, but as you're going through and working on play groups, you can increase, that's recommended at first, and then you can increase the play group to another child. You can make it into a group of 3 children. That there's a value to the child working with a group. However, if the group gets in trouble, if there's a problem, fight ensues, you can, as a parent, invite the group to do something. Bake cookies, go have wash your car, come up with an activity that can kind of not distract you, we'll just say encourage group activity, encourage group interaction. where they are all working together and kind of breaks that cycle of negativity, and then you perhaps can come back to the group later, or they can come back to the group later. Okay, additional, I talked also about how teachers can help. A parent can request a conference with a teacher on social needs, specifically. Most teachers will respond favorably. You can discuss the need for a special friend, that your child needs a special friend, and the teacher can arrange to connect your child with a good match who has a similar disposition, who has similar interests, and can work on seating so that to encourage a play pair, someone to play with your child. Again, we're talking younger here, probably early elementary, probably pre-K to second grade here. Playground pairs and walking to and from school, maybe for a little bit of an older elementary child. But that's how a teacher can help, because teachers know the students, and they can make suggestions and also talk to other parents about it. That might also be helpful to you, because I often hear parents tell me that they can't, it's hard for their child to meet someone. It's also hard for their child, it's hard for them to meet anyone because they don't know the other parents. But again, your teacher can also be a filter, and also if parents I highly recommend parents participating in school activities if they're available, if there's a art show, if there's a concert, if there's something. It's great to see your child perform, but it's also good to maybe talk to teachers, find out who else does my child talk to, who else is talking to my child, and then meet those parents. And actually, you're going to have to go out of your way to do that, but it will be worth it, because you'll be able to possibly make gains in having your child have a playmate or someone who they can communicate with, where you can invite them to your home because you know the parent. And ADHD, ASD, children with learning disabilities have some additional challenges. I'm talking generically today about social skills, but I did say that a lot of the children who receive these services have ASD and ADHD. They have probably a highest proportion of the children I work with. And some of the challenges that they have are their impulsivity, short frustration tolerance, and lack of concentration. I would put that more on the ADHD side. The difficulty to pay attention to social cues can also be ADHD, but a lot of my children with ASD are kind of more showing that component. And children typically with these characteristics, including children with learning disabilities, I've found when it comes to socialization, do better, make friends easier with children with similar disabilities. And sometimes that is something that might be a surprise to some parents, because a lot of parents feel that their children should be able to make friends with anybody, and they should be able to, and I encourage that. I'm just reporting that some of the research shows that children who have ASD seemingly do make friends easier with children with ASD and have longer lasting friendships, in addition to children with ADHD and children with learning disabilities. And that sometimes is because of the similar nature of the characteristics. In my social skills programs, sometimes parents will bring a 12-year-old, I'm just going to use that as an example, to me, and they'll say, my child has never had a friend. And it's a tearjerker. It's one of the most difficult experiences that a parent can have, having a child who doesn't have a friend, and it usually breaks their heart. They'll come to a social skills group, 4 or 5 children in a group, and they will be stunned. I'm not going to say this happens every time, but it happens quite often. The way the kids, because a lot of my group members will have ASD, how they all just automatically gravitate toward each other. And I've just had parents sit in the lobby of my building and tell me they were in awe of the fact they've never seen their child communicate as well with another child. Now, also part of that is that the environment, a social skills environment, is very positive. The group leaders we're encouraging, we're giving positive reinforcement a lot. And so that's a positive environment, and they feel like sometimes group members will tell me that other kids have never been this nice. Everyone's trying to work together. But I've just had some amazing statements, heard amazing statements from parents of children who it's the first time their child has been in a group or in a setting with another child with a similar characteristic. And it's amazing because what happens is they end up getting along. And I'm going to say, I don't, for my groups, I usually look for group members who are very specific. I'm looking for, I don't usually have children who are major behavioral problems. A lot of my children, ADHD, are receiving treatment. And so it makes a little bit of a difference because if you're not receiving treatment in your ADHD and your social skills group, you are not typically going to encode the information that we are presenting. The information that we're presenting is heavily cognitively driven. It's a lot of words, it's a lot of thought. You have to self-analyze, you have to make decisions, you have to problem solve if you get into a problem. That takes that takes a skill set of the ability to listen and encode. Encode meaning hear it and actually have it stick, not go in one ear and out the other. And so I found that some children with ADHD who have not been treated or not have any type of medication management, for example. I'm not advocating either way, I'm just saying what my experience has been, is that if I find that that is not happening, sometimes these children have the hyperactivity component. If they have the hyperactive component, and let me just preface with that, they have a hard time hearing the information and will constantly or may constantly say, "What did you say?" Or could you not understand it? And when it's time to role play, we're not completely sure what we're doing. But this is not everyone, but it's a lot of children. So what we find is that, what I find is that children who are receiving some form of treatment for their ADHD are more able to understand the lesson, practice the skills, and demonstrate a higher level of learned skills and success. So the point here is that children have, there are some difficulties with children with learning disabilities, ASD and ADHD, and the key there is that they can be improved, their skill set can be improved. That's the majority of children I work with. But they will usually have to, we will just basically require specifics. Children with ADHD usually work better with children with ADHD in a group. I do not mix usually my groups. I don't work. I've done it all. I've done this for 10 years. I teach skills groups fall, spring, and summer 3 times a year. And typically children ADHD, they seem to work better together. They sometimes don't have as much tolerance from a child with ASD who might be presenting with requiring a little bit more time to process information in some cases. And sometimes there's just a natural division there. But not all the time, but sometimes. Parents can also help their child. I'm going to jump back to that. My slide, a little bit out of order there. If parents can identify a child's interests and identify experiences that they like and connect the two. So their child might like working with Legos, they might like Legoland, but they might not like large groups. Or they might like riding rides, or they might like being out in the open, but they don't like crowds. So a parent just needs to know really what it is their child likes to do and try to avoid those situations if they're problematic, but think of things that they can do to help the child be in a social situation. Maybe a smaller playground would be better than taking your child, if they meet a friend, to Busch Gardens if you know your child does not like large crowds, or if they seem to have a meltdown, or they seem to have behavioral problems in larger environments. Also, playing games with your child would be important, making friendships a priority. We focus on academics, typically. We focus on sports. Friendship needs to be a priority. If you're working, especially in the area of social skills, if you're a parent with a child who's having problems with making friends, and sometimes we think that they're going to outgrow it, but the research shows that they don't outgrow it. It lasts through to adulthood if we don't address the issues, and we've already indicated that it can result in emotional issues later in life. So it's very important to make it a priority. Invite friends with children over to your home. Offer to take children places with your child. Eliminate things where your child has been unsuccessful at making friends. If your child's been going to the YMCA summer camp for 3 years, think the YMCA is great. But if they're not making friends there, you might want to look at changing to something else that maybe would be of a high interest, but that would also meet certain other criteria that the child would like. Maybe they don't like going outside for long periods of time. In the why they go outside, that can be a problem. So the other piece here is that offering to take children places with your child. From my experience, children, parents who are working with children who are having social deficits, they're going to have to work a little bit harder, I'm here to say, to make these unions work. They might have to drive farther, you might have to go across town. I've heard parents say that my child has a friend, but they live, further away. They live 20 miles away, and so we're not doing that. Well, my recommendation is to do it. Find a way to do it. I know that it's not easy financially, gas prices, but it's very important. If your child's comfortable with someone, it could take them quite a while to get to that level. So if you've got that built in, you would want to take advantage of that. So you might have to work you actually will have to work a little harder in terms of making bonds meet, and it might not feel fair, okay? You might feel like, well, why isn't someone else offering to come over to me? Well, that might not be your situation. Your child might have a deficit, a little bit more of a deficit, not be as popular, and you might have to go the extra mile to make those connections. And it might not feel fair, but you might want to do it anyway, based on my recommendations to what I've seen time and time again, parents not doing it and then their child sitting home possibly over the summer with nobody to play with at all or no one to connect with. And you might not, that last part about the child's interest, you don't have to love the interest. So if your child wants to do fencing, like my daughter did, and I would sit and say, fencing, why? But you might want to realize that you don't have to love it, but if your child really likes it, they're going to be more motivated and they might be more likely to connect with somebody there who's also motivated. Even if your child has a disability and they're connecting with a neurotypical child. Okay, additional ways parents can help is to set clear rules for appropriate behavior. Children learn social skills from family rules. As families are maybe correcting their child or maybe raising their voice or somehow trying to get their child's attention, just realize that how you treat your child is how he or she may very likely respond to others. So it's important to realize that you are modeling behavior for your child at all times. Teach basic problem solving from toddler on up. Please and thank you. And sometimes parents think, oh, well, that's cute if they're doing something. They're not as interested in teaching a skill at a young age because they think, oh, that will pass. Well, it won't usually pass. It won't pass. It's important the earlier you teach, the better. To teach the skills the earlier. I mean, not to try to speed it up, but to say that it's important from a toddler age and up to teach social skills. An example here is please and thank you, your basic skills. Mentor your child by talking to them before they go to the party. For example, as children get older, it's important so you're going to go from young child to elementary to middle and high. And as they're getting older up to that, like upper elementary, middle school age, it's really going to be a little bit more of talking to your child as opposed to, you can model behavior, but it's going to also be talking to them about things as opposed to setting up a play date. They'll maybe be more independent at this stage and just brainstorming ways that things can work out for them, talking about what will happen if something happens at the party they're uncomfortable with, what they can do. Listen and then ask them for ideas of how to solve problems, very important. Role play, what to say in different situations with your child. Role model using social skills with your child. Listening and eye contact would be an example. So it would be important for for a parent just to be trying to use eye contact with their child and listening. And that gets harder as the advent of cell phones and a lot of parents are even on their cell phones. But it's important to take the time to try to think about how you're modeling for your child. And also perspective taking. So parents can just talk about other people's viewpoints. How do other people feel? And trying to beat that drum a little bit so that it can remind their child that there are other people have feelings that they need to think about. So, and just want to reiterate, the role playing is something that you can still do up to any age. I had said I want to just talk a little bit about age again here, is that we want to, you can role play. Some children are not going to be as welcoming as in the teenage years, but if you're able to try to do that, that would be advised to at least attempt it. And because even though they might not look interested, they are still listening. They are still listening and learning. Okay, so I'm just going to close by saying that social deficits are common in children. Specifically children with, let me just say, they're common in children mostly with ASD. They're also common in children with ADHD, and some children with learning disabilities, children with also intellectual disabilities. And today I'm really focusing on talking about generically how social skill intervention can help children with these challenges. I think that the key is having pretty much knowing what's going on with the child. If it's helpful going in, when I do intakes on children, I pretty much have an idea of if they have a diagnosis of a disability. I pretty much will know what it is because I will need to know that. I also will know what their deficit area is by talking to the child, the parent especially, and the child and any other professionals involved in the child's life. So it's important to know what the deficit area is. Is this a child who's having a problem initiating, acquiring skills in general, practicing their skills? And there's a big difference there. So it's important to say that these children benefit from, usually we have to know what's going on. If there is a diagnosis of something, we need to know what the deficit area is. And once we have that in place, then designing an intervention to help the child benefit specifically, or to learn skills to offset that deficit. It's also important to have a parent component, whether that is a parent who is working with the child independently, who is not yet in a social skills group, or a parent who is involved with who is bringing their child to social skills programming, who also needs to help carry the skills over. So it can be a combination, but I recommend assistance approach, which is a program, and I also recommend parent training, so the parents can know what to do. The other program that I had talked about that I use is social thinking. I had referred to that earlier. It's a very good program that teaches. It helps to teach. It has a parent component in it. It has a teacher component in it. You have to many programs have various components that you can benefit from. And so if anyone has any questions about programs, about individual ways that parents can help, I could be contacted. I have my email address. Let's see, I believe it's on the front. Oh, it's not there. Okay. It should have been on the first slide, but my email address is Curtwright, BCURTWRI at health.usf.edu. So that's health is an HEALTH .USF is in University of South Florida .edu. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.